Hello, I'm Jake Boudrot, Civic Journalist at Tello Community Television. This week, on The Record, the Executive Director of the Nova Scotia Seafood Alliance details the possible impacts of Chinese tariffs on seafood from Nova Scotia. I attended the monthly public meeting of Port Hawkesbury Town Council on March 4th, and after the meeting, officials with the Cape Breton Regional Enterprise Network and Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton took questions from the media. Universite Sainte-Anne explains changes to its Bachelor of Education program. Local recipients of the Atlantic Fisheries Fund were announced. But first, the Member of Parliament for Cape Breton-Canso reacts to the new leader of the Liberal Party of Canada, as well as Canada's next Prime Minister, Mark Carney. Joining me is the Member of Parliament for Cape Breton-Canso, who is also the Parliamentary Secretary for the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency and the Parliamentary Secretary for the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans and the Canadian Coast Guard. Welcome back, Mike Kelloway.
Great to be here, Jake.
So first of all, what is your reaction to Mark Carney's decisive win in the Liberal Leadership Convention on March 9th?
Well, you said it, a very decisive victory. Mark comes to this job with a significant private sector experience, significant experience in managing the economy, comes from rural Canada, was the governor of the Bank of Canada during a very tumultuous time with respect to the economy in 2008, was the Bank of England governor during Brexit. He's really coming with a lot of skill sets that actually, I think, are lining up to where we find ourselves with tariffs, where we find ourselves with the economy writ large. And what I like about him, he's down to earth. He has that rural sense of humor. And I was glad to support him early in the race and look forward to working with him as he transitions to be the next Prime Minister of Canada. We'll go into an election. And I think, as I've said to you on this, on Hello many times, Canadians are going to have a definitive choice in terms of how we go forward in the future, in the immediate future and long-term future. One is a very right-wing approach that is perfectly fine if that's what you want, and also a centrist view that's going to put people in the economy first and looking at how do we make strategic investments in the economy and in people and in infrastructure. So he's ready to go toe-to-toe with Trump, and I'm looking forward to being part of that team.
So in your opinion, how did the Liberal Convention go on last weekend?
Wow. Well, I was there, and I'm still in Ottawa. There were 3,000 people there, people from all over Canada, people that I haven't seen in a long, long time. There's an enthusiasm with Mark. There is a confidence in Mark. And I think 86% of the vote almost is unheard of. But I think it speaks to his skill set, ability, character, and hats off to Karina and Christia and Frank Bayless, who put their names forward. But now we have a leader, we have a prime minister, a new prime minister soon, and this is where the rubber hits the road. Yes, the polls have been dramatic swings. Let's put it that way. You and I have talked about it in the past. In December, the polls were not looking pretty good for the Liberal Party across the country. There's no denying that. Now there is an immense upswing. I think last time I checked, 54% in Atlantic Canada, for example, among some of them. Well, polls will go up, polls will go down. But I think when it comes down to leadership, and I've studied leadership and I've taught leadership, and what I think people look at a leader is confidence and security, that they know what they're doing. And people in Atlantic Canada have a very good BS detector. So they'll be able to detect BS on everybody's part. And they're going to look to authenticity, they're going to look to skill set, and they're going to look to results. And that'll be the choice that people will make in Cape Breton, the rest of mainland Nova Scotia, Atlantic Canada, and all of Canada. And I think it's going to be an exciting time. But make no mistake about it, our landscape has changed where everyone is anxious about the tariffs, anxious about jobs, anxious about putting food on the table. And Mark has the skill set to put forward, I think, a pretty solid plan. Look, I liked what he said at, he said it at the convention when he accepted the leadership. He said that one of the first things he's going to do, probably this week or next, is put a stop to the carbon pricing. That's significant. And capital gains, get rid of that. And I would say that he's going to look at ways to support Canadians. What a key thing that I liked what he said, Jake, was he said that markets don't have values, people do. This is coming from a banker. This is coming from somebody in the private sector that knows how to run a business, that knows the stress of running a business. Values. Canadians have values, markets don't. And I think you're going to see in the policies that he puts forward that, we will have to probably, certainly look at budgets and looking at being more center as opposed to left of center. Now, that's the question that everyone in Cape Breton and the rest of Canada is going to have to make. Do you go with a Conservative Party that is not a progressive Conservative Party? They are right of center. But if that's what you like, that's what you like. Or do you go for a centrist that looks at fiscal responsibility, but funding programs that make sense to fund for Canadians at this moment and in the future? That is going to be the debate. It's going to be one worth having. And Mark Carney is going to take on Trump. He's going to take on Poilievre, who have very similar ideologies. And I look forward to that. I look forward for Canadians to be able to ask the questions of their candidates, ask them to ask questions of their record. And with Mark, where do you want to go? Where do you think we need to go as a country? And that's going to be key for all leaders, quite frankly.
Now, you just talked about a couple of policies that he introduced during his speech after winning the Liberal leadership. And another one that Carney did allude to was the building the pipeline east towards Quebec, which would have been a departure with some past policies and opinions, I guess. When you look at things like that, is there a danger that the party might be tacking too far towards the right, maybe even past being moderate? And do you think that viewers are going to see that or see that as flip-flopping? How do you see that? How do you think it's going to be taken?
I think it's going to be taken that you have a new leader who has new priorities, who is a pragmatist. And the fact of the matter is that Canada has changed because of Trump 2.0. We are going to have to look at being more self-sufficient as a country. We're going to have to look at new markets and doing that on speed and penetrating new markets. We're going to have to look at diversifying our resources. What do I mean by that? Well, oil and gas you just mentioned. But I'll also take, we don't have to look too far to look at renewable energy in Cape Breton and northeastern Nova Scotia and really doubling down on our efforts, which coincidentally, the Conservative leader and the Conservative Party voted against Cape Breton and northeastern Nova Scotia in terms of altering the accord to put new regulations that would actually be the blueprint for a green economy in Cape Breton and northeastern Nova Scotia. So it's not, I don't think it's flip-flopping. I think it's like leadership is about, to me, looking at the context you're in. And context changes and things change. Churchill said it best, events, dear boy, events. What he meant by that was that you could have the most solid plan, but world events or domestic events can change that plan. And the question is, are you going to stick to ideology? Or are you going to pivot because of the things that you see in front of you, tangible things that are causing Canadians hardship? And are you going to make a pivot from that? And I think that he's a pragmatist. He's not too proud to change. And I think we're saying that here. But Canada is in a position right now with a right-wing ideologue in Donald Trump, a strong man in Donald Trump, who believes that, make no mistake about it, we're in an economic war here. So with that, we're going to have to make sacrifices as a country, and we're going to have to pivot from policies that maybe made sense 3 years ago, but maybe don't make sense now. Because if Trump leaves in 4 years, here's the thing. If Trump leaves in 4 years, and I say if, because I'm not exactly sure he will leave in 4 years, but if he leaves in 4 years, the philosophy and the ideology of the Republican Party is Trumpism. So this is not going to change overnight. So we're preparing to create a stronger Canada, and we'll be changing policies and re-examining other ones that make sense too. And I've seen this, quite frankly, I was chatting with someone here in Ottawa about the leadership of Justin Trudeau during this, but also Doug Ford and also Tim Houston. So they put ideology aside. They put name calling aside, blaming aside, division aside. And what they've said is Canada comes first. And I respect that. And that's what we need going forward with Mark Carney. And I have no doubt we'll have that with him. He went from his home area in Yellowknife on a scholarship to Harvard as a goaltender. So this guy knows how to stop pucks and knows how to throw an elbow or two. And he will be doing that. And I'm proud of being on his team. But I think as Canadians, now is the time not to fool around with leadership. Now is the time for steady, proven leadership. And I think that's Mark Carney. But again, one of the great blessings of being in Canada is that you can, vote for who you want to vote for. But again, the Conservative Party of Canada right now is a very, and this is by their own definition, a very hawkish right-wing party. It's not a progressive Conservative Party. And I think that's going to be the difference going forward. But every party will put forward their policies, and it'll be up to Canadians to look at that and make their judgment calls accordingly. And the voters are always right, even sometimes when we don't like the results.
Now, yesterday you guys had a caucus meeting. The Liberal caucus met in Ottawa, I believe. And at some point in time, the new Liberal leader is going to be visiting the Governor General to be sworn in as Prime Minister at some point in time. And then at some point in time after he gets sworn in and is officially the Prime Minister, then I believe he forms a cabinet or makes some changes to the current cabinet, or if he wants, he can basically keep it as is. And maybe, kind of get you to explain that process, because there seems to be some confusion out there as to what happens now. Once he becomes leader, he doesn't have a seat, but he's still leader, and the government still does function on some level.
Yeah, and let's go back a couple of steps. During the proroguement of government, the business of government has continued since December. There's two things that haven't happened. One, we haven't been in the House of Commons for debate. And two, committees have, for the most part, not taken place. But everything else, the operation, the machine of government, funding initiatives within the existing budget we have, has taken place. Now, Mark Carney right now is the Liberal leader, federal Liberal leader of Canada. That has happened. Justin Trudeau is still the Prime Minister, to your point. Probably in the coming days, no question, there'll be a transition of power. Then, meaning that Mark Carney will be the Prime Minister of Canada. Now, the Parliament is supposed to go into session on the 24th of March. It's unclear at the moment if that will happen, or will the election be called. And there are many pundits that will tell you it's going to be the 17th of March, it'll be the 24th of March. I've even heard people say that we might swing a deal with the NDP, which I think is highly unlikely, to be frank. I think we're going to be going to the polls soon enough. I think the Prime Minister, Mark Carney in this case, will have a choice to make in terms of keeping the cabinet ministers where they are, or it's his prerogative to go, I want a larger cabinet. I want a smaller cabinet. He can make that choice. He might look at the 10 cabinet ministers that are not reoffering and fill them for the weeks ahead. I think there are 10 ministers that are not reoffering. So there's a lot of ways that this could go, but the Prime Minister, Carney, will sit with his chief of staff and his advisors, and he'll make that decision on who goes where. It could be his prerogative to say, you know what, everyone stand pat. Everyone stay in their positions. In terms of cabinet, we're fine. So that I don't know. I don't know what, but that will come out in the next day, 2 or 3, I would assume.
I know Ontario MP David McGuinty was interviewed on the weekend, and he mentioned that he seemed to be pretty confident that it was going to take place quite soon. And it seems to be, a lot of people seem to be thinking that it's going to be before March 24th, when Parliament is supposed to be back in session. So is that the sense you're getting, that it looks like it's going to be called probably before that, and that we're probably going to have a spring election?
I mean, look, for what it's worth, and I have no information on this at all. It's just my opinion. But I would think that if you were a betting person, I think you would probably be, put some money down on the 23rd and an election on April 28th. But when I make predictions, they're seldom right. So just take that with a grain of salt, folks. But we'll see, right? But that would be my thoughts on that.
That is a pretty precise guess. I guess we'll see if you're right or not. But
Yeah.
if there is a campaign, an election soon, do you foresee that the carbon tax rebate is going to be front and center as what the Conservatives seem to be asserting,
No.
or do you see it more as it's going to be a matter of what's going on south of the border as it relates to us, the tariffs, the threats of taking us over and us becoming the 51st state? Do you foresee that the Trump specter as dominating the election?
Yeah, look, I'd be the last person to give the Conservatives advice on how to run the next campaign, but I think they run on a carbon price that has been stopped by us. That would probably be not a good move. I think that the election, no question, as of now, things can change, is about the existential threat to Canadians, to the Canadian economy, to the Canadian way of life, to jobs. Everything that is connected to our battle with the United States is connected to table issues, kitchen table issues. There'll be other issues that will come up that'll be part of each other's platforms, and hopefully will be addressed by that. But this is a defining moment for Canada. If they want to talk about the carbon price, they seem to want to talk about that a lot. They spent millions of dollars wanting to talk about it on billboards and radio ads and things of that nature. Well, Carney said on Sunday night, it's done. So if they want to talk about that, fill your boots. But we need to be talking now about such a deep, immediate, midterm, long-term issue. That is, where do we go as a country? And who's best to take us there? That I think is going to be the question, because in politics, it's about feel, I think. And right now, Canadians from coast to coast to coast are full of anxiety, worry, anger, concern about our standing in the world and how that impacts a mom and pop shop in Ayrshire. Think about it right now in the seafood sector. A 25% tariff by the Americans on seafood, a 25% tariff by China. That's devastating. Who do you want there in the chair, in cabinet, who do you want there to work with to create a better way for fishers? Well, let's debate that. But I think the Conservatives would be mistaken if they go down that road. But I don't swing in the right wing circles, so maybe they have a different opinion than me.
I assume the Liberal Party of Canada is now looking for candidates. And first off, when do you expect there's going to be a decision made in the riding that you're looking at running in Sydney Glace Bay?
It's in the coming days. It would have to be. If we look at an election in the 23rd, hypothetically, you would need to have people in place. And so my hope and my expectation, I think I've laid out a strong argument to run in Sydney Glace Bay, and I know Jaime Batiste feels the same way from his perspective. Party will decide who goes where. But I can say that I've received a lot of support from everyone over, like in Cape Breton-Canso and in Sydney, Victoria, and I'm very appreciative of that. But we'll probably know in the coming days, I would think, Jake.
Now, as for Cape Breton-Canso and Ganesh, I know when I spoke with you previously, you mentioned there were a few people who you spoke with who had some interest in seeking the nomination. And have you heard from others, from more people? And do you expect that some people are going to declare anytime soon?
On declare, I can't say, but I've certainly received a number of calls from credible people, well-known people who are waiting to see what happens with Sydney Glace Bay with me. People that have said to me to a person, we can't have what we have in the United States and Canada. I'm very interested in running. People that you would know, if I mention their names, you would know right away. Even if I said the first name, you would know right away. But that's going to come out in the wash in a couple of days. We've seen such a swing in people in the last 4 weeks across the country wanting to run for the Liberal Party. Very, very good people, credible people who want to be part of, at the time, the Liberal Party, but a Liberal Party under Mark Carney, and now they have that. So we're seeing like the only way to describe it is a real boost of energy I haven't seen in 6 years, quite frankly, in the party, among people who want to join the party. We've had, I think it was 350,000 new people who've signed up for the party. We've had our best fundraising in the past month or two on record ever for the Liberal Party. That's telling me something. I'm looking forward to seeing a full slate of candidates across the country. I'm looking forward for like a debate on what we want Canada to be and where we want to go as a country and our future and our present. That's what it's about. And again, there'll be good candidates in the NDP. There'll be good candidates in the Conservative Party. But this is around who do you want to govern this country? And I think, again, coming from Cape Breton, people have a pretty good nose detector, and I think they'll make their choices accordingly, based on a lot of things, but primarily, do you want Pierre Poilievre being the Prime Minister of Canada, imposing a right-wing agenda that is even slightly identical to the Americans, or do you want something else? We'll see.
Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule. I know you're leaving Ottawa and on your way back home. And
that's the hope. That's the hope. With flights, you never know.
That is true, eh? But I appreciate you taking that time and speaking with me and our viewers.
Hey, listen, I always love it. I'll continue to do it. You guys perform such an important service to the communities that you serve. And it's balanced. You interview everyone, and everyone needs to get a sense of what's on the menu from each party, and then select the course of meal you want.
Joining me is the Executive Director of the Nova Scotia Seafood Alliance. Welcome back, Kris Vascotto.
Thank you, Jake. Happy to be here.
It was confirmed recently that Chinese counter tariffs of 25% will be imposed on Canadian seafood as of March 20th. Just over 40% of Nova Scotia's live lobster exports go to China. According to a statement by China's Ministry of Commerce, the new tariffs on $2.6 billion worth of agricultural products and seafood are in response to a 100% tariff Canada placed on Chinese-made electric cars and 25% tariffs on their steel and aluminum announced last October. What impact will this have on the industry?
Well, if you first have to step back and take a look at the landscape of where we are in Nova Scotia. So overall, our wild fish and seafood exports are about $2.1 billion. Now, if you start breaking that down, about $1 billion of it goes to the US and another $600 million of it goes to the States. So essentially, 75% of our overall exported value into different trading partners has just been hit with a massive tariff risk on the order of 25%. So you also have to put it within your own context. If I were to ask you to go to the grocery store and pay 25% more for any particular item, you would be a little bit stunned, and you might choose to put another item in your cart. So automatically, we know that there's going to be a downward price pressure associated in the marketplace with these products alongside the imposition of 25% additional cost. Now, the question is, where does that 25% come from? So we know on our side that we're going to have to work to try and put the prices up in the marketplace. We expect there to be substantial resistance against that just because of the current geopolitical climate and the current economic climate. At the same time, we're going to be absorbing some of these costs, and these costs are going to be absorbed the whole way down the value chain, right down to the level of the harvester. So I expect in the near term, at least, as we're at the cusp of a bunch of fisheries starting to really hit mainstream and opening up, we're all going to be taking a bit of a hit when it comes to the price of wild fish and seafood right down to the wharf.
So I noted in that same post that talked about those tariffs, they said that some people within the seafood industry have been talking to buyers in China And have you talked to any of those buyers in China, and do you have any indication of what they're saying right now?
I'll be honest, I haven't spoken actually into any of the contacts within China. I've spoken to quite a few here in Nova Scotia that have very, very close relationships with China. And again, everybody was somewhat surprised that this announcement came in. Nobody really expected this to be coming at the wild fish and seafood sector until Friday night at about 10 o'clock, yet here we are. In the near term, what we're seeing is a fairly large amount of volumes trying to get into China before the tariff is actually implemented on March 20th. That goes without saying. Now, the question is going to be what's going to happen after that point. At this point, we can't say whether they're going to be changing the volumes that they're moving in. Will they be willing to move the same amount of product at a slightly lower price point, or at this potentially at the same price point? So it's still a little bit unclear about how this is going to play out, but we can expect, and we have heard this very similar to our US customers, there's not really an appetite for them to swallow an additional 25% cost on some of these items.
So apparently the seafood industry feared being targeted by counter tariffs ever since the October announcement. So in that time, has the industry been preparing for this possibility?
Well, I'll be honest, I think that every industry that in Canada that was reliant on Asia for some of our actual exports really felt themselves to be at risk because of this. So I don't think that put us in any especially different place than any other spot. At the same time, we realized, we had the October announcement of the counter tariffs or the tariffs against China. We had the rhetoric beginning down south of the border during the election campaign. We knew that something was coming. So yes, people have been undertaking efforts to diversify and find other markets. That effort has been ongoing really as long as this began to arise. But I do have to note, nobody ever expected that we'd be hit by two of our largest trading partners at the same time with exactly the same trade action. And what this has done is it's actually created a bit of an imbalance that we most certainly didn't see coming. For instance, right now, if we were to move live lobster from the United States into China, it'd be running about a 17% tariff plus a 9% VAT tax on top of it. If we do the same thing from Canada now with that recent announcement, we're running at a 32% tariff and the same 9% VAT tax on top. So because of this decision that's been made, it's now preferable for many Chinese exporters to actually ship out of the US as opposed to Canada. And given the noise that we've seen politically, we were completely stunned by that turn of events, and it really came at us quite unexpectedly.
Now, when you say VAT, I assume that's value-added tax. Is that what you're referring to?
Yes, and basically that's a tax on an importer that just accounts for marketing and things like that within the country of China, and it's a standard rate that's applied.
And you just referenced this at the same time, United States President Donald Trump has promised a 25% tariff on all Canadian exports, including seafood, which would go into effect in early April. About 40% of live lobster exports, along with 70% of frozen processed lobster, go to the United States. Nova Scotia exported $1.02 billion worth of lobster in 2024, making it this province's second largest export. Is the impact on lobster worse than it is on other sectors within the seafood industry?
I don't think we can actually say that. I think what we can say is that from a dollar value, it's going to have a bigger number of zeros attached to it. But that doesn't mean that these impacts aren't going to be felt everywhere. I'll give you a great example. We ship 100% of our fresh Atlantic halibut into the United States. So that's of all of the fresh Atlantic halibut that's landed here in the province, we don't ship anything anywhere but the United States in a fresh form. So immediately we're going to see a major impact on the other side. And we experienced this during that short period that the tariffs were in place last week, where basically US buyers just said, we refuse to pay the additional 25%. So we know there's going to be an impact there. Now, as we look to the China example that's going on, we have some fisheries that actually their focal markets for the vast majority of the volume are China. Think about sea cucumbers, think about whelk. Those products are largely going into China. These types of decisions may render some of those fisheries being unable to operate this year simply because there's just no interest on the other side to buy the product. So there are these impacts. While it might seem that the big one is lobster, that might be from a cash value standpoint, but these impacts are going to be going throughout the entire scope of the exports from Nova Scotia.
Now, the owner of Tangier Lobster called it incredibly poor luck to be facing American and Chinese tariffs at the same time. He also called the situation hard to comprehend. The business owner said the impact of Chinese tariffs will be significant, and I think you've highlighted that, and I assume you agree with that assessment.
Oh, for sure. I mean, anytime we have these types of trade actions, I mean, one was our best ally down south of the border. Nobody would have seen this one coming. On the other side, we were dealing with a retaliatory tariff that was based on electric vehicles and steel and aluminum. I didn't see, canola or wild fish and seafood in any of that discussions, but unfortunately, here we are. So yes, there are going to be fairly dramatic impacts, especially on this coming cycle that we have as landings are going to start to ramp up. Processing operations are turning on the lights later on this week for snow crab. Most of that product goes down into the United States of America. Halibut fishers are starting to get on the water again. Lots of fresh product moving in. That goes down into the United States of America. Our lobster fisheries are every LFA under the sun is about to start pinging in a couple of weeks. Well, we're going to see some instability there. We're going to see prices begin to change, quite simply because during the peak season, we use our markets down in the United States to actually act as a pressure relief valve. When we get very, very high landings domestically, we're able to use the United States to be able to pick up that product and process it and do things with it in their own way. With them being faced with a 25% tariff on incoming product, that's going to change that market dynamics substantially. So what we've got is a coalescence of a whole bunch of pressures that are basically going to act to compress the value in the value chain, and every step of the way is going to be feeling an impact.
So I guess what now? Where does the seafood industry go from here?
I think the first thing that we do is sit, take a breath, and try and grapple with what's happened. Obviously, this is an excellent opportunity for some diversification. Every time that we see one of these premium fish and seafood products go through a sort of price correction like this, well, all at once, that makes it more available for other nations to pick up and put on their plates. For example, during the recent rise in lobster pricing, we saw a lot of customers within the European Union say, look, that's too expensive for us to risk putting into our tanks and putting on our plates. Now that that price is probably going to change, I suspect, in the near future, they might again be able to turn to it and say, geez, you know what? That's a really good idea. I'm going to try that. So what we're going to see, I suspect, is a large-scale diversification happen. At the same time, we're going to continue to encourage our federal and provincial governments to engage in those discussions with the Chinese trade officials, to engage in discussions with the U.S. to hopefully find some sort of reasonable resolution for these issues that are facing us. There is going to be some short-term challenges, though, and that's where we lean on our federal and provincial supports to be able to help carry us through this difficult point. As I look forward, I say to myself, well, we're probably going to be having a very, very challenging spring, but I'm hoping that's going to be the low point. After that, we'll be able to push prices up and try and get back to where we were. This is just a short-term hiccup that we're going to have to face and try and move forward with.
So if I'm inferring what you're saying there, if you can get some supply, some fish into the marketplace, and maybe that can dictate or at least have some influence over the price.
Well, that's exactly it. I mean, right now, our two biggest customers have said we'd like to pay 25% less for this seafood so that our customers keep buying it. Well, there's other places out there that will be willing, more stable trade partners that will be willing to take that product. So it's a matter of getting in there, getting in front of them, teaching them about the product, and encouraging them to pick it up at a price point that actually matches their customers. So in many respects, we're now into part of rebuilding markets and generating new ones. These things are not done overnight, though. That's the one caution I have to say. Sometimes we hear the rhetoric of, oh, we'll just sell it somewhere else. That's not the way this actually operates in the real world, because it takes time to get the logistics chains there. If we're talking about live lobster, you have to make sure there's a place on the end that you can hold them before you take them actually into the market. When you talk about something like fresh Atlantic halibut, that's really a new product for many markets. So we have to educate them on why it's a good product, why it's a premium product, and why they should actually consume the product. So there's a lot of work to be done. But, like I say, there's always glimmers of hope in some of this. So at the end of the day, in 12 months, we might be in a position with a much more diversified marketplace. And one that's a little bit more resilient to when one or two of our major trading partners decide to throw one of these wrenches into the monkey works.
Well, I appreciate you sitting with me and talking about this very important subject, Kris. Thank you very much.
No worries, Jake. And I just ask that your listeners understand it's going to be a tumultuous year, but we're going to do our best. We're not going anywhere. The sector is still going to be moving. We just might be moving different places and doing things a bit differently than we have in the past.
Well, it's something I definitely plan on keeping abreast of, and I anticipate we'll be speaking again.
Happy to chat anytime, Jake.
At the Port Hawkesbury Town Council meeting, Rochelle Sampson with the Cape Breton Regional Enterprise Network talked about progress on the Ocean Innovation Center on the town's waterfront. One of the things you talked about, Rochelle, was about the Ocean Innovation Center, and you said you're doing some work right now, and you're going to be bringing some plans to the council and all that. So you said essentially you're trying to find the right people and the right uses for the space, essentially, is what you're talking about?
That's right. Yeah. So right now it's currently a wide open space, and the concept is to have multiple people in there collaborating and working in an industry to develop either technology or new and innovative things. And so we're that kind of happened throughout COVID, and so the project paused a little bit, and so we're looking to pick it back up and finish it and continue it and make sure we can, branch the pieces together and get some people in there to start that collaborative experience.
So the partners here are NSCC in the town, is that correct?
That's correct, yeah, and the Cape Breton Partnership.
Okay. So ideally, what's the ultimate hope for the Oceans Innovation Center? I mean, as you say, it got going during COVID-19, but it has the chance to pick up again. What do you and your office hope for this Ocean Innovation Center in its final form?
Ideally, keeping with the ocean innovation theory is with its close proximity to water. It's an excellent location. If people could come in and have those conversations about how to better or more innovatively help the blue economy sector, which is the fishing sector, if they could come up with innovative technology to help fishermen either be, more efficient on the water, or whether it be parts for their boats or parts for fishing and even aquaculture development. So if that industry could thrive a little bit more and you could give it a base, working with places like NSCC and CTAC, you've got those supports to help people take something from an idea to an end product.
What do you think are the next steps in terms of the development there?
It's in discussion, what that might be, but I think really getting it out to the public and making sure that they're aware of it and they're aware of the supports that can go with it, that they've had this location and they have the town that's going to, help them to potentially develop something and work with us as well. Really just making sure that it gets a good use from the people who need that space.
Now, I assume in regards to the presentation by Rochelle Sampson with the Cape Breton Regional Enterprise Network and about efforts to try to find uses and people for the Ocean Innovation Center, I assume you guys will be happy once you're able to find some occupants and some uses for that facility?
I'm very excited about the Oceans Innovation Center. It's a bucked place, and a bucked is Mi'kmaq for ocean or sea. And what's really great about innovation is, economically speaking, innovation is like an economic accelerator. So when you have an innovation-driven enterprise, there's 3 to 5 small to medium-sized businesses will coalesce around an innovation-driven enterprise to support that enterprise or business or whatnot. And that's a really interesting way to accelerate economic development in a community. So right now it's kind of a bit of a blank canvas, and its genesis occurred during another time of uncertainty around COVID. But we do really see huge opportunity around the Oceans Innovation Center, especially because, when you look at our competitive advantages as a region, we have the Nova Scotia Community College and we have the Nautical Institute. We have an emerging green hydrogen and an offshore wind sectors that are emerging here. And it's not just something that unique to the Strait or to Nova Scotia. It's a national opportunity, right? So when you look at, of course, these immediate times of uncertainty, we also have huge opportunities. So how can you take, that uncertainty and, refocus on the kinds of things that could open up all kinds of new trading partnerships, like, for example, offshore wind, and green hydrogen, and the potential partnerships with Germany and other European markets. So these are the kinds of things I think that we can focus on. Of course, we have to deal with the immediate circumstances, but at the end of the day, if we look at how do we grow, not only as a town, but how do we grow as a region? I think it's going to be essential that we're creating a space for innovation. So having a space in Port Hawkesbury that's going to serve the entire Strait plus Cape Breton South, Unama'ki South part of the island, I think is going to be a huge advantage. And there's nothing wrong with having an advantage for economic development. I mean, isn't that wonderful?
Let's talk a little bit about NSCC's Nautical Institute and about the role they're playing here. How important is it that they're a key partner in this project, and what do you think they're bringing to the table in terms of oceans innovations?
I think they're bringing a wonderful element to the Port Hawkesbury waterfront. Certainly they're an important partner and changing the face of a very historic building in Port Hawkesbury. Certainly we wouldn't be having the same conversation about a decade ago. It used to be a bunch of different things, but originally, historically, it was a creamery. And over the years, it's been a community center with a quilt market, it's been a candy shop, and then it's sat vacant for quite some time. So it has a facelift, and right now we have NSCC and the Nautical Institute operating there as one of our anchor tenants. We have the Abuct Place, Oceans Innovation Center, plus we have still lots of space in the back that could be a maker space. It could be another extension of the Innovation Center. It could be a place for, to seed another industry or company. But at the end of the day, this is a very important tool to have in our town's economic development tool belt. Certainly when you look at the opportunity to work, you're bringing together critical partnerships. So we have NSCC and the Nautical Institute, you have the Cape Breton Partnership, you have the town of Port Hawkesbury, and bringing in some of those, private interests or innovation entrepreneurs and creating that collision space. I think wonderful things will happen. I mean, it'd be a cool space also to be able to host, kind of like startup weekends where maybe NSCC or Nautical Institute students can come and, let's do a hack weekend where, okay, let's talk about, a safety issue that you need a solution for and brainstorm something. So I think that space is going to not only enrich Port Hawkesbury and bring some, hopefully some new economic development opportunity to the town and also the Strait area. But I think it also adds value to NSCC as well. I mean, in some practical ways, but also, how do we kind of connect innovators with students? So, I mean, I think that there's a lot of great partnership potential going forward, and I'm very excited to see how that space, I guess, continues to develop over the next 1, 2, 3 years. Maybe 10 years from now, we'll have a even better conversation.
So you gave a quarterly report about the activities that are happening in the Strait, and you finished the report by saying we've got a lot going on. It's busy around here. So what can you tell me about some of the activities that you and your colleagues are working on and why, as you say, it's so busy around here?
Yeah, well, there seems to be, some really good growing industry, especially in the Strait, with some subsidiary businesses that are looking to get into what seems to be like a growing economy in Cape Breton. So it's very important that we're on the ground and we're always out there and making sure that we're communicating and collaborating with people to ensure that they know that they've got the right supports at the Cape Breton Partnership and that we can assist them, in multiple areas of whatever their struggles might be or their interests or their wherever they might want to grow.
Now, what can you tell me in terms of the green energy file? Because you brought up the public engagement sessions that were held with Net Zero Atlantic and the partnership was involved in as well. Where do you feel green energy is sitting right now? Because we'd seen the Premier making announcements about how his government wants to really concentrate on resource extraction. Is green energy taking a back seat at all to that announcement, or do you get the sense that it's still rolling along and that you and your colleagues are being a part of that discussion as well?
Yeah, I don't believe it's necessarily taking a back seat. I think it's going to trek its trajectory and sit with the province to make some important decisions. And so I think it was great that they got that feedback from community and fishermen and locals and community members. And I think it's going to continue to roll in a positive direction and make some changes in the near future.
Okay. Let's zero in on Port Hawkesbury for just a moment. What do you feel are the most important things to work on here? And what can you tell me about some of the things you and your office have done, just even as we say in the first quarter of 2025, in terms of Port Hawkesbury and developing its economy here?
Yeah, Roxbury, is well known for a great place to work, and I think that they're really working towards making sure that people know it's a great place to live as well. And so, making sure that there's balance between community engagement as well as economic development. And so, we're working both hand in hand on that project. And so, on the developer side, we're really looking to make sure that any developer looking to come in has a smooth and excellent experience when they want to develop here in Roxbury. And so, one of my projects is going to be to make sure that that process is as clear to developers as possible, and even individuals, community members who are looking to get development permits for building homes and settling in and building a life here.
When you talk about developers, how high is housing on the priority list for you in your office?
Housing continues to be a priority. We work with as many developers as we can, and we try to make sure that we're stay current and stay on the ball for those types of projects, as they're really important. And so we've done a couple of different smaller projects, making sure that there are still developers who are interested and making it a very attractive place to want to come and do those types of developments here in Roxbury.
Coming on the same day, United States President Donald Trump announced tariffs on goods from Canada entering his country. Port Hawkesbury Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton, as well as the Cape Breton Regional Enterprise Network's president and CEO Tyler Mathis, gave their reactions. So what is your reaction to the announcement of the American president announcing tariffs on Canadian goods entering the United States? I guess what I'm thinking of is the effect it's going to have on large local employers like Port Hawkesbury Paper.
Well, certainly we'll be watching federal governments, what they're planning to do to in reaction to the tariffs, and our provincial government as well, and looking to see how can we create some synergies around the actions that both orders of government are taking, to look to see how can we be proactive as a local government, and how can we work with our community partners, and especially our community partners like the Strait Area Chamber of Commerce, the Cape Breton Partnership, who will be supporting businesses, whether they're small, medium, or large scale businesses or industries, during this time of uncertainty. So we certainly want to get as much information as possible so that we are ensuring that we're taking a very measured and careful approach to make sure that we do focus on being resilient, and we do focus on what are our options and looking at other markets, and to Tyler's point, like how can we kind of explore maybe some of those options that might not have been at the forefront because of some of those strong trading partnerships with American companies, etc. So it's certainly important that everyone takes the time to fully understand the implications of these tariffs, and then to make sure that they understand that local context, and that will require having those candid conversations with the partners that we are going to be working with our business community, with the Chamber of Commerce, to understand how can we support the businesses who have supported us for the past several decades and longer. I think it's going to be important that we do help with resiliency, and is there anything that we can do also to support our federal and our provincial partners, to look towards solutions, and how can we become more resilient as we navigate this new space that we now find ourselves in.
Premier Houston not wasting any time, putting some measures into effect, doubling tolls in the Cobblewood Pass, NSLC locations pulling American liquor off the shelves, and setting a $200 million contingency fund aside to help those who would be impacted by the tariffs. Do you get the sense that the town can work hand in hand with the province and, as you mentioned, with the local partners to help everybody get through this?
I think it's absolutely imperative that local government work with other orders of government, during this time of uncertainty. Obviously, all orders of government have different roles and responsibilities, and we can support in different ways as well. And I think what's going to be extremely important, obviously, is to stay informed with all of the actions that are being taken at other levels. To stay connected with all of our important partners, especially the Chamber of Commerce, to fully understand how is the tariffs manifesting locally. Like, what is that like? How are businesses like Port Hawkesbury Paper, for example, being impacted by that? And do they need assistance or support, if they are pivoting to other markets, or looking, what are their needs, and how can we support some of our businesses, and not just within the town of Port Hawkesbury as a town council, but regionally, because just because there are municipal boundaries around the town of Port Hawkesbury doesn't mean that businesses and industries that fall outside that municipal boundary isn't worthy of support, or because certainly we have all kinds of synergies and interconnectedness with our neighboring municipalities, First Nation communities, businesses. I mean, I think we need to act regionally, to act provincially, and to act nationally with regard to the tariff issue, and work on solutions together as well, and try to figure out, make sure that we're taking very measured and careful and purposeful approaches to navigating this moment of uncertainty that we're currently in. And what do we do in the first week? What do we do in the first month? And how do we make sure that we're minimizing the negative impact and maximizing new opportunities that can help create resiliency during this time of uncertainty?
Concerned about the impact on town residents and just basic consumers in terms of prices going up, that becomes an affordability issue on its own. What are your thoughts there?
Well, what I've been observing locally is kind of a sense of pride in being Canadian. And what I've also is observing is, people being more mindful as they're, as consumers. So they're literally picking up items in the grocery store to see, where's the origin of this product, or and sometimes they're putting it down and picking, looking for a Canadian option. So I believe that the average citizen is taking the tariff situation very seriously. I feel like everybody is dedicated to do their part in contributing towards a solution. So that very small act of being purposeful, even in the grocery store, is going to have a ripple effect nationally. And I mean, it's not going to be the only solution, but it's certainly something that one person can do to help a situation that we are currently in. And there's empowerment in that, being able to feel like, in all this uncertainty, and I feel like a very small part of what's happening to our country, this is one thing that people can do to feel like they're kind of, taking back some measure of control.
Tariffs went into effect literally last night at midnight, Canada responding with retaliatory tariffs. How does the Cape Breton Partnership and the Cape Breton Economic Development Community respond in the face of all this? And is there a specific focus on the Strait where you have people like Port Hawkesbury Paper that do so much work with the U.S.? Just basically, what's the reaction and where do we go from here?
The tariffs, is terrible news. The United States is an incredibly important trading partner for Canada and a trading partner for our region. And so we look forward to resolving this, and most certainly it will impact our communities. Just as the Prime Minister, this is a national issue, not just a Cape Breton issue, but companies like Port Hawkesbury Paper are international companies. We're very encouraged to see their commitment to continue to move through this challenging time with us as a community, as they did through COVID and as they did through many other times. Jeff Clark is on our board from Port Hawkesbury Paper, and they remain committed to their community and to their employees. And so, time will tell how we're able to navigate this tough time. Most certainly, it will impact our lives. And but this region has seen resilience in the face of very difficult times in the past. And I would argue that it is well positioned again to ride out these difficult times in a uniquely strong way. We are a place that people want to live. And so in this era where we're competing for people and their minds, and we have a great place to live, and people want to come to this region and trade with the world. And while trading with the United States is going to be more difficult in the short term, trading with our European partners, trading with the Caribbean, trading with other places in Canada, those are strengths that we have. And we have people that have lived in all of those places in this part of the world, and those personal relationships are going to shine. And so I think we are resilient and we're well positioned to get through this tough time.
You used the word resilience, and these tariffs have had about a month to percolate in the business community, not just here in the Strait, but around Cape Breton and, of course, around the country. Are you hearing resilience more than fear? Is there fear, or are people, as you say, just digging their heels and saying, you know what, we'll find a way to make this work?
I think there's both. With uncertainty is a fearful thing. Business people are great planners, and everyone knows those plans go astray the first sale you make. But nonetheless, when it doesn't go according to plan, it's difficult. But I do think resilience is where we're at, because people are committed to where they live here, and they want to make a way for them to continue to live. They've done that through many tumultuous times in many industries. This one is a challenge across our industries, whether it's the fishery, which has been here for a long time, our manufacturing partners that send goods to the U.S. and receive goods back. But again, I would say in this month, as you noted, we have people that are exploring trade relationships that were kind of on the back burner, whether it's a Canada-EU trade agreement, whether it's becoming more productive in applying new technologies, AI and things like this. Those are things that were less of a priority when we had our very good trading relationship with the United States. So now that that's more challenging, these other opportunities are more attractive, and we're confident that our business community will adapt to use them to their greatest advantage. And we look forward to resuming trade with the United States, but when we do, we'll be able to resume trade with them and continue trade with these other folks that we've developed during this time.
Port Hawkesbury Mayor Brenda Chisholm-Beaton then discussed the importance of recognizing April as Sexual Assault Awareness Month.
Now, given the recent cases of intimate partner and gender-based violence, how important is it to approve the request from the Strait Area Women's Place for the flag? I know it's a flag, it's ceremonial, but I guess this is a good time to raise awareness about this subject.
No, absolutely. I think it's important for our community to support really anyone who has had any kind of gender-based violence or domestic violence, been in a situation of family violence or domestic violence. It's more prevalent than people think. And I think that survivors, seeing the flag raised in the town of Port Hawkesbury, are going to feel like they're seen, that they're going to feel supported. And I think even minimum, that's the right reason to raise the flag. But I think it's also important, to Deputy Mayor Langley's point, that we take the time to communicate what that flag means as well to citizens in the town of Port Hawkesbury, so they too, when they look at the flag, they can understand how important this issue is, and hopefully find ways where they can potentially be part of the solution. And just even understanding that, or being an empathetic ear, and I think is important, because I think we all need to come together as a community to be supportive.
The situation with intimate partner violence is that we sadly hear about it when there is a death involved, but it can be happening all over the community in silence. So can you speak to the importance of, you got the request from Strait Area Women's Place, which is of course an offshoot of Leaside Transition House. Can you speak to the importance of having those services in Port Hawkesbury to help out the victims that we may not see, that may be walking among us day to day?
I think having knowledge and being aware of the fact that this kind of violence is happening in our communities, I think that is important, because we can't take strides to change and look for solutions unless we are all aware, but also accept that this is a community problem. This is not a problem that's happening in a very private manner. We need to kind of take this topic out of that box, because it is a very public problem, and I think everyone needs to be part of the solution, because knowledge is power. So if we are very aware that this kind of thing is happening, then we will be better able to recognize red flags if it's a friend that may be going through it, or a family member, or a sibling, or because we will be better supporters if we take the time to learn more about it. And the people who are going through these kinds of situations, they'll be more supported knowing that this community accepts and understands and isn't going to judge, and we're here to help and we're here to support. So I think everybody has a role to play to get to a moment in time. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we didn't have to raise this flag? Wouldn't that be something to aim for? Because then we know that we have a community where everyone feels accepted and everybody belongs, no matter your age, level of ability, your gender, your sexual affiliation, any of those things. Like everybody would feel accepted and belong, whether it's Port Hawkesbury or any other community.
With me is the president of Universite Sainte-Anne. Welcome, Kenneth Deveau.
Hi, Jake. How are you?
On March 3rd, Universite Sainte-Anne announced that students interested in the Bachelor of Education program now have the option of enrolling in an accelerated 16-month option starting this September. So I'm assuming this will be offered at the Petit de Gras campus as well as others across Nova Scotia?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We'll be offering it in all our campuses as per our usual offer of our BED program. So yeah, starting in September, people enrolling in the BED program will be able to do that accelerated model. And actually, it's a 16-month program, but within 12 months, they'll be in the classroom. So their practicums, we backloaded the practicums so that they can be in the classroom after 12 months.
So previous to this change, the Bachelor of Education program was a 2-year program. So what does this entail? Now, you mentioned that it's kind of backloaded. So maybe if you want to talk about that, I guess it's accelerated instead of 2 years is 16 months. So maybe if you want to go into a little bit of detail on what that entails.
Sure. So essentially, the program is the same. So it's we're going along the same program that has been approved by the Department of Education and the Maritime Provinces Higher Education Commission. And so you will be graduating with exactly the same credentials and the same course load and the same information, the same background. So we pride ourselves in training the best French teachers in Nova Scotia, not only teachers that teach French, but also teachers that teach in French, be it at the CSAP school board or in immersion programs. And we're not cutting any corners on quality there. The training these students will require will do will be exactly the same. It's just reorganized. The practicums will be a little bit shorter.
Now, Universite Sainte-Anne noted this delivery option will meet, as you noted, accreditation requirements and preserve the quality of the students' learning experience. So maybe you can go into that a little bit. Even though it is shorter, you guys are keeping the same standards with this program.
The students will actually study through the summer as well. So we didn't touch people's Christmas vacations or study breaks, because those are important for students. They need those breaks in the middle of their semesters to catch up on their homework and do their assignments. And they need their break at Christmas and at Easter. So we didn't touch those things. But in the spring of 2026, students will just roll into another series of courses, and again in the summer of 2026, so that they're ready to go into the classroom in September 2026.
So being able to complete their programming faster means that graduates will be in the classroom, putting their learning into practice as early as September 2026, as you just noted. Do you see that learning component, that in-classroom component, as important as the classroom, or even more important? How do you see the two fitting together?
I was a professor of education, actually, so I sort of know this quite well before I went into university administration, although that was way back before cell phones and all that. Yeah, no, the students they'll be well prepared once they'll have their academic baggage. I suppose there is a compromise there. It would be nice to have practicums integrated throughout the program so that people could go from the classroom or the academic setting into schools and back into academic settings. We're not going to be able to do that with this. We'll backload the practicum, so they'll do all their academic work and then go into the classroom but that setting will be the same. It's just that it'll be right at the end of their practical training. But then they'll be working with classroom teachers, experienced classroom teachers that will be able to help them make that transition from the university lecture halls to the classroom and school setting.
Yeah, it's important to be able to put them in that school setting. There's a lot that can be learned in the classroom, but I guess, the other school of thought is that, in that classroom, that's kind of where the rubber meets the road, I guess.
It certainly is, and it actually, it certainly is, and it's a vitally important part. We have a very close relationship with the CSAP school board, but with all centers of education, as they're called now, to assure that the very best teachers are chosen to support our students when they're doing those practicums. And of course, anecdotally, school boards are telling me that they're very happy to see these people enter into the classroom in September. So they'll be there right from the start, and many of them will just transition right into jobs and in many cases in the school where they're doing their practicums.
Across Canada, including in Nova Scotia, Universite Sainte-Anne said there's an urgent need to recruit, train, and retain teachers for French language minority schools and French as a second language programs. As the only university in Nova Scotia to offer programs in the teaching of French as a first language, and to award the specialist diploma in the teaching of French as a second language, Universite Sainte-Anne said it is keen to respond to this shortage. How bad is the shortage in Nova Scotia and in this region specifically?
Well, I'm not sure specifically about the Strait region or Cape Breton more generally. I know it is very important. I know that, speaking to, the CSAP school board and so forth and other centers of education, there are a number of teachers in Nova Scotia public schools right now that don't actually have a teacher's degree. They have a temporary certificate. So maybe people, for example, with a bachelor's degree in chemistry, teaching high school chemistry, but with no formal teacher training. It's you do what you have to do, right? That the school boards need people in those classrooms with our kids, but we can't continue to go on that way. It's vitally important that the foundations of these students' education is of the very best quality, and that's what we're trying to meet. Also actually maybe a precursor, we are also working specifically with the CSAP school board right now to come up with a plan for those people that are working in the schools right now that don't have a teacher's degree, so that we can help them obtain that degree while being gainfully employed. So that's something else we want to work on, but that'll be for another discussion. But I just wanted anybody who's listening who'd be interested in that, to know that we are working on that as well.
So Universite Sainte-Anne said it will continue to offer Bachelor of Arts and Bachelor of Science programs integrated with the Bachelor of Education and the 2-year Bachelor of Education. How exactly does that work?
Yeah, so that's a good question, and people might ask why we're doing that. So the normal way to go into education coming out of high school at Sainte-Anne and or even Universite de Moncton, it would be the same thing in many universities. We enroll them right out of high school into an education program. So we integrate their BA. Let's say they want to be a history teacher. They will simultaneously do their BA in history and their BED, and in 5 years, which is essentially, if you were to put them end to end, would be 3-year bachelor's well, actually it'd be a 4 years bachelor's program plus a 2-year education degree. We're able to compress that into a 5-year program, actually. So you graduate with a major in history, for example, and a BED program specializing in teaching history. Or biology in our case as well. We have many students that want to be science teachers. And I believe we actually have some from your region that I know of that are in that program. So that's something that we want to continue to do, so that when people come out of high school and they want to be teachers, they can go right into an education program and start doing their bachelor's degree and their education degree simultaneously. So that degree that we're offering, while we're doing that, the 2 years of the equivalent of 2 years in education, we're keeping that intact, so that if a student, for example, wanted to not opt into the accelerated program, but wanted more a normal program, say for instance, they have to work in the summer and make some money to pay for their next semester, that option, we're keeping that option open for them.
So in closing, I guess getting away a little bit from the Bachelor of Education program, how are things going at the Petit de Gras campus? How's enrollment? How's engagement? And generally, how are things going there?
So we have a number of students in the Strait region and that are affiliated with the Petit de Gras campus that are doing it. Most of those students are in college programs that are offered online, like early childhood education and teachers aid programs. That's going quite well. I mean, we'd always like to have more. At the university level, we have several students. I actually just met with one the other day. The president of our student council is from Port Hawkesbury. So we have a number of students from your region as well that are at the university, but they would be at the Church Point campus, so that they can benefit from the labs and the sports teams and so forth. So that's rolling well. But something that's really important in particular about the Petit de Gras campus, which is a very important part of our university, and personally for me, one of the things I'm proudest of that we do as a university is the Marine Research Center. That Marine Research Center is very important to Ile Madame and to this Strait region and Cape Breton more generally, but also to all of Nova Scotia. We do something out of that campus that radiates throughout the province, that is a model for the rest of the country, how we're working so closely with the fisheries industry to help them, for example, working with the lobster pounds, helping improve the quality of their water and ultimately the quality of their product and their profit margins in the end of the day. Those are things we work on out of the Petit de Gras campus, which are, a source of pride for the university. And for me personally, having been involved directly with Michel Thériault on those projects and the gang in Petit de Gras for a number of years now.
Yeah, I was hoping myself to get back there. I know I was there last spring, and I'm hoping to go back again and make another visit and hopefully another program there, because it's interesting what's going on there, and it's a real asset to this region to have that there.
It certainly is. It's an asset for your region, but it's actually somewhere where your community, Petit de Gras, the very small village of Petit de Gras, and that small center there is really a leader in the province and innovation and development in the fisheries industry, where the innovation and leadership doesn't necessarily have to come from the center. It can come from the smallest villages in the most remote parts of the province, and we're showing that.
No, that's great. I couldn't agree more. Well, I appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with me and our viewers and answer my questions. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. It's one of my favorite parts of the province. I visit Petit de Gras on a regular basis. I have for a very long time, and I will continue for a very long time, I hope.
On March 6th, the Government of Canada and the Province of Nova Scotia announced funding through the Atlantic Fisheries Fund for 142 projects in Nova Scotia's fishing and seafood sector. The funding, a total contribution of $36,838,064, will help harvesters and processors modernize equipment and improve quality, productivity, and sustainability, the government said, noting that this funding will support new infrastructure, innovation, and scientific partnerships. The federal government will provide 70% of the funding, with 30% coming from the Atlantic provinces. The local harvester recipients include Grandpa Verney Fisheries Limited in Arishat, which was approved for $20,000 to purchase and install a live well system for lobsters and a canopy extension on a new vessel build, part of a project with a total cost of $60,168. The Fisheries Co-op Limited in St. Peters will receive $289,915 for the installation of a refrigerated seawater system to improve the quality of snow crab. The total project cost is $386,650. Processing grant recipients include Petit de Gras Packers Limited of Alderney Point, which was approved for a grant of $86,954 to fabricate 4 crab dumpsters that will help unload crab, a project that costs $115,939. The funding is from the $400 million Atlantic Fisheries Fund, funded by the federal and provincial governments. The fund focuses on increasing opportunities and market value for sustainably sourced, high-quality fish and seafood products from Atlantic Canada. Kent Smith, Nova Scotia's Minister of Fisheries and Aquaculture, said this funding has helped the seafood industry increase efficiencies, address labor constraints, access new markets, and maximize economic benefits. Partnerships with a number of industry associations have allowed the fund to reach all regions and sectors of the industry, Smith noted. Introduced in 2017, the Atlantic Fisheries Fund will continue to invest in projects until March 31st, 2026, at which time all projects receiving funding must be completed. Mike Kelloway, MP for Breton-Canso and Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Fisheries, Oceans and the Canadian Coast Guard, said the Atlantic Fisheries Fund plays a crucial role in the modernization and advancement of the fishing and seafood industry. Kelloway added that this funding directly supports local projects that will drive economic growth while promoting long-term sustainability, improved product quality and technologies, and the competitiveness of dynamic coastal communities. Thank you for watching. Please tune in again to find out what we will be talking about on The Record.